Is Budgets on My Mind, Changing Budget Allocation to Meet Teaching and Research Needs. I'm Denise Novak, the Acquisitions Librarian for the Carnegie Mellon University Libraries. Presenting with me is Denise Pan, Associate Dean, Collections and Content at the University of Washington Libraries, and Corey Murata, Director, Collection Analysis and Strategy at the University of Washington Libraries. The shifting landscape of academic programs, scholarly communication, acquisitions environment, and staffing patterns in academic libraries necessitates changes in resources, budget structure, and allocation models to align with and be responsive to this new landscape. This presentation includes case studies from Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Washington. We'll share these changes made to our budget structure and allocation, and we would like to invite you to discuss thoughts on budget allocation and models in libraries. I'd like to begin with a short history of Carnegie Mellon University. Founded in 1900, the Carnegie Technical School was funded by Andrew Carnegie, who donated $1 million for the creation of a technical school for the city of Pittsburgh, a school where working class men and women could learn practical skills, trades, and crafts that would enhance their careers, lives, and communities. The school grew rapidly, began to offer baccalaureate degrees through the College of Engineering and the College of Fine Arts, and became the Carnegie Institute of Technology. There was no library on campus. Students used the Carnegie Public Library of Pittsburgh and small departmental libraries on campus. By 1960, the Institute of Technology had an enrollment of 3,500 with over 1,600 part-time evening students. It became obvious that Carnegie Tech needed a library of its own, and thanks to a generous donor, Roy Hunt, a library was built on campus. In 1967, Carnegie Tech and the Mellon Institute merged to become Carnegie Mellon University. Today, the university is a global research university of approximately 14,600 students representing 114 countries. Over 5,000 faculty and staff representing 48 countries work and teach at the main Pittsburgh campus, our campus in Silicon Valley, and our campus in Doha, Qatar. The university libraries in Pittsburgh are comprised of 3 separate libraries. Hunt Library, this is Carnegie Tech during World War I, where this is the site of the library, and it was a parade ground for soldiers going off to Europe. This is Hunt Library, which houses fine arts, humanities, and social sciences. It's recently become the home of Ideate, the integrative design, arts, and technology network of Carnegie Mellon, which offers undergraduate minors and courses in things such as game design, animation and special effects, innovation and entrepreneurship, intelligent environments, and physical computing. The Sorrells Library holds the engineering science, materials science, computer science, and robotics collections. It was recently renovated to create more study space for students, which meant the majority of their books went off-site or were recycled in some other fashion. It holds fewer than 5,000 books now and is completely electronic unless the material is only available in paper. Mellon Institute Library contains the life sciences, biology, and chemistry. The history of Carnegie Mellon impinges upon the university libraries in a financial way. Because the university is comparatively young, and the university libraries is just a little over 50 years old, the university library's materials collection has not been as robust as other institutions. When I came to Carnegie Mellon, the budget had been allocated the same way for many, many years. Each major subject area received an allocation that was divided into books and journals, and the STEM areas received the majority of the funds, and the reasoning for this was the expensive nature of STEM and the number of students enrolled. I'm not sure you can read this very well, but this is this year's allocation for our fine arts department, and you can see that it's divided into several books, approval books, journals, and then for music, it's music recordings, music books, and music scores. In my 26 years at Carnegie Mellon University Libraries, we've been lucky to receive an increase to the library's material allocation each year. Some years not as much, but we've managed. In the years before electronic journals, the Budget Committee struggled to allocate funds and pay for the renewal of journals. The Budget Committee is comprised of our Associate Dean for Collections and Information Access, the Acquisitions Librarian, and the Acquisitions Accounts Manager. Each fund had their own pot of money for journals and another pot for monographs. Now our journals budget is over 50% of the overall allocation. The University Libraries has entered into licensed multi-year contracts with some of our publishers, you know, the big ones, Elsevier, Springer, et cetera. Added to that, the majority of our subscriptions are electronic. The College of Fine Arts and some of the departments in the Dietrich College of the Humanities and Social Sciences continue to rely on paper, and I can't get them to move off that as much as I try. The Budget Committee placed the allocation for journals in one big pot about 10 years ago because the price of journals kept rising and the Budget Committee wanted to use journal funds to pay for journals more equitably. When there's a need for a new journal, the liaison librarian fills out a new resources request called a new sub form. These requests are reviewed monthly by the Expensive Purchase Committee. We began the Expensive Purchase Committee about 5 years ago as a change from just, submitting a request for an expensive item that we couldn't afford. The Expensive Purchase Committee was created to review requests for one-time purchases and ongoing subscriptions. This group controls an allocated sum of money to review and approve expensive one-time purchases and new ongoing subscriptions for materials. The committee has representatives of library faculty from the humanities, the sciences, the fine arts, and the budget committee. We've used this process for probably 7 years now, and it works very well, and the liaison librarians were very happy with this change, and they didn't give us very much pushback. Although the book budget has remained flat over the years, the number of ebooks and ebook packages we purchase continue to grow. Librarians are able to purchase ebooks on a title-by-title basis with their allocated book budget. We are now allocating more funds to ebooks, so we have created an e-resources fund to pay for ebook packages, full-text databases, and e-resources such as CapIQ, Global Data, Grant Forward, and Policy Map, which are databases of information, and they're not your traditional database. The Expensive Purchases Committee also reviews these requests. In the late 90s, we started a traditional approval plan, and since then, our approval plan has undergone major changes as we moved to an electronic collection. Our approval plan representative visits twice a year to help us fine-tune our profile. And 2 years ago, the science library, psychology, statistics, and philosophy became E-only, while design and film became E-preferred. We still have English, history, art, and drama that remain primarily print. 2 years ago, Carnegie Mellon began to shift from the traditional MLS collection development selector model to the PhD specialist selector model. The dean of the university libraries believes that it's important for library faculty to understand each department's milieu and have an expertise in the discipline to assist and collaborate with faculty in their research. This has resulted, in requests for very different material and different types of electronic materials, such as a subscription that I just ordered called the Energy Transition Show, which is a podcast. I don't know if I can turn my page. Carnegie Mellon offers more than 90 programs and majors, including minors within its 6 undergraduate schools, colleges, and inter-college degree programs. The university continues to add new programs and majors such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, brain science, digital scholarship, Ideate, global politics, and bioinformatics. New programs have been funded using the university library's endowment funds, but we must now rethink how the materials budget is allocated. In addition to changes made in the past decade, the university libraries plan to make greater changes in the future, and a task force on budget reallocation has been established. The mission of the newly created Budget Reallocation Task Force is to create a budget allocation aligned with our new collection development policy. This reallocation will create more equitable distribution of funds, more effective use of funds. It's going to align the budget allocations with the new collection development policy to allow for more effective teaching and research, and will create a well-defined, nimble budget which will allow the university libraries to change as needed. And our work will begin probably the middle of December, as soon as the library faculty approve the new collection development policy. As Carnegie Mellon's new president, Farnham Jahanian, said in his inauguration speech, "While the past has left a bright trail, the future is arriving faster than anyone could have predicted. Our entire world is adapting to unprecedented advances that are rapidly transforming our economy, our society, and our culture. And we must ask ourselves, how can higher education fit into this dazzling future? Well, I say, how can we make sure the university library is a part of that future?" Thank you.
Cursor. Sorry. Great. I can't see the cursor. Do you see the cursor? Did you already? Oh, but I don't see the cursor. Do you see the cursor? Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Denise. I am also Denise Pan from the University of Washington, and I'm here with Corey Murata to talk about the University of Washington experience. So we're going to split between Corey and I, and we have 4 parts. I'm going to give you a little bit of context about UW and talk about some trend analysis from a survey that we administered over the summer, and then Corey's going to give some more compare and contrast from the survey data to what we're doing at UW and some conclusions and next steps. So a little background. The University of Washington Libraries is one library serving 3 campuses and ranked in the top 10 of the U.S. public research universities according to ARL, Association of Research Libraries. We serve about 50,000 full-time students, over 12,000 graduate students, and grant PhDs in 116 fields. The library collections expenditures average about $16 million, and we operate 16 physical library locations with 350 employees. We allocate to 70 different subject areas with about 50 different subject librarians. And in the fall, we started a multi-year process to examine and update the resources budget structure and allocation. This model had been fundamentally unchanged for the past 20 years. Recognizing that our allocation practices no longer aligned with our changes with the university environment, we initiated this process with the goal of developing a better model that could begin to serve the changing needs of our students and researchers, and allow us to respond more nimbly to the challenges and opportunities. And so to start this process, I convened an environmental scan task force. And the charge of this group was to establish baseline data, provide examples of budget allocation models and processes that will create more sustainable strategies for the collection development. And the data that they used were things like literature review, surveys, and interviewing some people who participated. So the preliminary version of the survey was administered in January of this past January, with the elect's Chief Collection Development Officers of Large Research Libraries, the CCDO group. 24 libraries participated and gave us some data. This was originally adapted from the Penn State University Libraries, and they had, and it's available online from their proceedings from 2013. They presented on their allocation model. And so this was done by Gregory Crawford and Lisa German. And so in their appendices, they include a survey, which became the foundation of the survey that we used for our survey. Corey and I submitted, after the January version of the survey, we resubmitted and made some updates from that sort of pilot run of the survey. We submitted it for human subject research, IRB, and then we sent it out on various ALA collection development listservs and other consortial groups. So the survey was opened right before ALA and stayed open throughout the month of July. We have participation from 91 different libraries, and the survey instrument has about 20 questions, mostly multiple choice, and a couple check boxes and fill in for expanded details. So a little bit about the participants of the survey. As I said, there was 91 libraries, 89 libraries, or 98% were academic. There were 2 public libraries that participated. 36 have full-time enrollment of less than 10,000 students. Nearly 9% do not grant bachelor degrees. That would be the public libraries and the 2 public libraries and 6 community college that participated. So, and of the ones, the majority that were bachelors, 2/3 or 70% offer doctoral degrees, and 1/3 offer less than 24 PhDs. To give you an idea of sort of the breadth of their collections, that their backgrounds. So what did they say? When we asked them about their current budget allocation practices, about half, or 54% of the respondents said they were currently using historical allocation patterns. More than 1/3 allocate budgets based on individual subject funds, and almost 70% allocate serials off the top. 25% as part of a single comprehensive serial line, and 44% as in separate lines according to a serial type. So that would be continuations, databases, e-journals. When asked, how do you create funds for new serials, 62% from collections of existing subscriptions, 20% allocate off the top, and 12% said other. Only 6% said from repurposing their monograph funds within a subject, college, school allocation. When we asked, how do you allocate for funds for new emerging needs, such as new programs, data, streaming, or media, other types of things like that, 27% said off the top as a separate budget line, 37% said funds are included in subject college school budgets, and nearly 40% said other. So that's the chart on the right. For context and motivations for change, nearly 60% said that they participate in new program planning. Similarly, nearly 60% utilize some type of cost share with another department or library or campus in a system. So that conveys that libraries are generally trying to be as strategic with the resources that they have. As evidenced by the size of this audience and the graph on the right shows, it's clear that budget allocations are on many people's minds. So that's the 2 charts on the left, they had said in the last 5 years, are they making changes to allocation or now in the future? And by and large, more than half of the participants are saying, we're thinking about doing something here. So when asked about the motivation of change, you could see in the sort of the second clump there is 47%. So the blue bar is in the last 5 years, and the orange bar is now in the future, making these changes. So budget cuts in the past 5 and in the future continue to be primary motivations. And the next clumps of bar is staff reorganization. You can see that it's declining a little bit of staff reorganizations being less of a motivator than it had previously. But what is interesting now for the future that is growing is changes for university administration. That is more of the reasons that people are making these changes now, as well as university administration and responsibility-centered management implementation. And this is when individual academic units control the revenue and expenditures, including support of libraries. So it looks like there's a growing trend of these sort of forces of the campus or budgetary process being a motivator for making changes. So when many survey participated there, you could see, and the other category is the last clump, where previous and now, there's other reasons. So what are these other reasons? Campus changed, and these are quotes from the survey participants. So one person had said, campus changed budgetary models, so the library aligned internal budgets to mirror campus budgetary process. Another person said, changes in the liaison model and wanting to be able to track spending at a more granular level. Or publisher movement to a single invoices covering all journals. And this last one that I'm sharing, and these are the ones for in the past 5 years, we wanted to increase our understanding of our expenditures, our consortial commitments, value return, shift to user-responsive purchasing, simplifying fiscal accounting, clarifying spending categories to strengthen support for minimal serious inflations on an ongoing basis. So those are some highlights of the people who made the changes in the last 5 years. Ones for the people who are saying, we're making them now or in the coming future, had said, moving away from upfront subject allocations to more agile, less prescriptive models. We are getting in our own way with all these little subject funds. Integrating OA investments with more traditional acquisitions. And the last one I'll share with you, enhancing user experience, using funds for user-initiated purchasing, increasing efficiency, clarifying our understanding of and narratives around how we are leveraging our materials budget. So with that, I'll hand over to Corey.
All right, so I'm the not Denise. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the UW context in comparison to what we found out on the survey and what we're thinking and what we've been doing. So currently, about 80% of our collections budget is allocated to serials or other ongoing costs. This is pretty much in line with most of the survey response. Over 60% said that their serials budget was between 70 and 90% of their total allocation. Currently, we allocate to about 70 subject funds. Denise mentioned this. That number has been roughly the same for quite a while. Until this review process, we were allocating to both monograph and serials funds. So we had monograph and serial lines for over 70 different subject lines. That creates some challenges with flexibility, and some of those subject lines you can imagine were pretty small because there's just not that much to go around. The allocation pattern or the allocation model that we've been using, and Denise mentioned this, hasn't changed for over 20 years, in pretty much the whole time that I've been at the University of Washington. So we, with the new programs, new acquisitions models, the e-journal packages, we knew it was, we knew we had to do something. We weren't in a period of crisis, thankfully, but we knew we had to do something. So we began this multi-year budget review process last November. One thing that we did in the early phase of the process, identified in the environmental scan and from the early part of, from the earlier survey, is we changed our budget allocation for our serials budget, so we no longer have those 70 serial lines. We collapsed a lot of them into disciplinary groupings, so we haven't gone all the way to a single serial line. That would be a pretty jarring change for many of our librarians. But we were able to make one small change, so that's what we did in the first phase. And so what we're into now with this larger survey is the second phase of the process. So I can tell you that, and Denise, I'm repeating some of Denise's, Denise said, but over half of the respondents said that they had made a change in the past 5 years or were planning to make a change. So what we know is that we are not alone in this process. So what did we learn and what are we doing next? So we were joking when we were planning, the three of us were planning that there were a number of people signed up for this and they were gonna want answers, like they were thinking that we knew what we were doing. And what became obvious in the survey responses is that nobody really has an answer. Everybody's trying, everybody's doing things differently, but nobody's really, well, there might be a few people that are happy, but for the most part, everybody's trying to find the better answer. And there's no magic wand. But what became evident, and what we've been thinking sort of intuitively for a while, is that there may be more than one answer. So, we're a large university. We support a lot of different programs, different types of, different subject areas with different needs of scholarship. They have different acquisition patterns and cycles. And I wrote in my notes, different levels of chaos. And it's not negative chaos, they're just messy. And we need to deal with that messiness sort of as it is. And until now, we've tried to treat all of our entire allocation process in one model to fit all of that in. And what's becoming more clear is that we may not be able to continue doing that. We may need to use different allocation models for different groupings or different sections of the disciplines and subjects that we support. So one of the other comments that came out in the survey from one of the mid-sized public academics was that we do not allocate the budget. And I was scrolling through the comments and I was like, oh, that's interesting. They continue that any library liaison can request resources. And wherever the need is, we support it, and not every program needs a new database or journal every year. There were actually a couple of libraries that really don't allocate out any budget. They have a single large monograph budget and a single large serial budget, and they sort of do things as needed. That's a little scary for me. But I think what that illustrates is that there might be areas where we might be able to do something like that. And there are definitely areas that we absolutely will not be able to do that because people will be very unhappy. So what's next? The first first step is we need to bring this back. Most of the, we haven't actually shared most of this information with our colleagues back home, so if they're watching this recording, this is all new for them. So we need to put this together and share it. One of the things that we have in our favor is we just went through a very demanding strategic planning process. And by demanding, it wasn't, it was hard, but what it was demanding of all of our staff to really think about the whole process and really build a strategic plan that fits what we want to do for the next coming years. So that gives us some guidance on the collection side and on the budget side for how we want to build budgets that align with our strategic plan. The other thing that is going on is that we have quite a bit of organizational change going on. As part of the strategic planning process, we're trying to develop a stronger culture for transparent and participatory decision-making. So that's building already, and that gives us some context for making some of these really tough decisions that we're going to be working through with the budget allocation process. The other thing that's going on, and I'm sure a lot of other libraries are experiencing this, is that we are going through a generational shift in library leadership. There's a lot of people who are retiring right now. There's a lot of new leadership coming into the library or moving up in the library. And that really gives us a moment in time that we can take advantage of, and not trying to exploit it, but take advantage of to really think about how we want to move forward as a library with this new leadership. So that's all. So that's all the context, and our plan is really to start hammering away at this. We have a biennial budget cycle, so this coming end of the fiscal year will also be the end of our biennium. So our target really is to have something in place to start the new biennium with a new model or parts of a new model that we can be moving towards a much more flexible, a much more a budget allocation process that's much better aligned at serving the needs of our campus. And there's a quote from Anna Karenina, and I actually looked it up. It's called the Anna Karenina Principle. Tolstoy said that all happy families are the same, and each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And the idea is that there's a lot of things that come together that make a happy family, but take away one or two of those things or any combination of those things, and you have an unhappy family. So I interpret that in terms of the budget is that we can't make everyone happy. We might not be able to make anyone happy. So my goal is to make everyone equally unhappy. And that would be as much of a success as we can hope for. So I think we have time for questions. Thank you.
Hi, Maria Salva, Claremont Colleges. I was one of the people who filled your survey. So I'm curious if you're planning to share a report of the results, because I'm also really interested in looking at the data.
Yes, we are. We're gonna.
Like tomorrow?
I don't know if anything's happening between now and tomorrow. The people who responded to the survey, who indicated that they wanted results, we're going to try and package it with anything that might be identifiable, stripped out, and send out that data. And we're also going to summarize it. Well, it's going to be in the conference proceedings. Is that what?
Yeah, the slides.
Yeah. So we are planning to share it out more with more detail, both to the people who responded and more broadly.
Hey there, I'm Damon Campbell, the Acquisitions Librarian at the University of Oregon. And like you all, we have just way too many fund lines. And like you all, we have a current allocation model that's basically 30 years old and hasn't really been adjusted. But unlike you all, we've experienced significant pushback from both our selectors and our faculty because there's this pervasive feeling of ownership of the funds. You're taking our money, you're cutting our money. And I wonder how or if you all have confronted that, or how did you get people's buy-in, or just bulldoze right over their lack of enthusiasm for this process?
I'm speaking more specifically about that organizational change in the next session. So you can just stick around and I'll tell you all about it.
Well, it's a generational kind of thing. We have new librarians who are very happy with what we're doing, and we have some librarians who have been at the university for 25 years or longer who are very unhappy. So we took those people who have been there 25 years or longer, and we put them on the reallocation task force.
Hi, I'm John Blosser from Northwestern University, and we are one of the ones who stopped allocating to funds in your survey. And I do recommend trying it, and one reason, and I'll say I was willing to do it because it sort of felt on my shoulders to make it work, is there was surplus in the collections budget, mostly from, I'm sure we all have a bottom line, and so we always had a healthy bottom line that every year. So that's sort of the insurance plan I had in place at the time. The second year, we actually started to spend out. And the reason for that is if you do try it, make sure your subscription load is within a manageable percentage of your budget. Ours was about 92%, which was way too high. So we're working on bringing that down. I actually have a question for you. So as life has it, things happen. So this year and probably next year, we're in a severe budget containment across the whole university. And so the collections budget has been greatly impacted. And it's interesting, some of the discussion that comes up when money's involved. We sort of got away from the fact that the liaisons think of it as their money, which was one of my goals because it's the university's money. But just recently, it came up that, well, what are we supporting? Research? Yeah, there's lots of research at Northwestern, and we bring in, hundreds of millions of dollars for it. Well, but what about teaching and learning? So where's the balance? Have any of you come across this issue that people want to almost put one against the other in conflict almost? How can, we have to support both, but have you come across the idea of supporting research as a topic and teaching and learning as a topic?
It hasn't come up as a very deep discussion. It comes up in the context of specific resources, especially where there are things that support curricular needs, and how do we, as opposed to research, and like how do we prioritize those curricular support resources over compared to our research. But we haven't, and this partially goes back to our allocation model. We have, one of our subject grouping is actually our undergraduate library. And it's not a subject, it's the undergraduate library. So their expectation is that they would be primarily supporting the lower division undergraduate needs, but they clearly can't, I mean, they can't buy everything. But it's something that I've thought about, and I don't really have an answer for you. I've thought about it in the context of the larger context of our sharing networks. We're part of two consortia. One that we do quite a bit of sharing with is the Orbis Cascade Alliance, and how do we? It's been running through my head. How do we think about making the best use of those sharing networks to support the much more esoteric needs where we might not be collecting heavily in, but we have some research going on? How do we take the best advantage of those sharing networks to support those needs and try to focus our on-site collecting on the needs of the students on campus, and especially the students who are more time-bound in their needs because they're, working on their assignment the day before it's due. So I don't really have an answer for that, but it's been something I've been thinking about and something that we've started to talk about in terms of our partnerships at different levels for sharing.
George Wren from Humboldt State in the CSU system. So at our library, we've done historical budgeting for forever, I think, and we recently started to look at better models. And what we learned was that something like 80% of our budget was going towards the sciences. So there was and we have 3 colleges, and we were looking at ways to sort of do a readjustment so that we thought we were trying to be more fair in terms of, because we think we got way out of whack with the ways, the science journals go up in price probably much faster than other things. So when you're doing historical budgeting, you're ending up spending more and more and more money in the sciences and more of your resources going in that direction. So have you thought at all about if those kinds of realignments need to be done at your institution, or how you would go about doing a realignment? I'm getting, my dean is telling me, well, it's far too imbalanced at this point, and there needs to be some sort of correction across the different disciplines.
I have no answer to that. I mean, we face that every year. It helped when we put things into one big pot, and it also helped when we did multi-year contracts with some of our big publishers. It kept the annual cap down, but I don't really have an answer for that at this point.
Yeah, I think that's going to be part of our discussions this coming year about how we think about rebuilding the budget allocation model. Yeah, I have other thoughts rolling around, but I don't have anything cogent to say about that. And I think we have probably one more question for Kanata.
Okay. Due to flat budgets, we've had to go to basically allocating based on last year's cost by department. And as you moved into one budget, I mean, not one, but 2 lines for your resources, have you experienced frustration from the different departments to feeling like they're not special?
No, we have not had that experience. Everybody seems to be pretty calm about it. We do know that there are some funds that are historically underfunded. So each year, when we break out the budget for the coming fiscal year, we try to take a percentage, however small it might be, off the top of the budget and put it toward those underfunded subjects, which, even if it's just a little bit, it helps the selector feel like, well, and we do care. I mean, a lot. So it helps, but it's certainly not the complete answer.
No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.